Alright, in these next two videos we're going to look at European imperialism throughout the world, and in this video we're going to look at mainly the European imperialism in Asia. All imperialism is just a process of controlling others, and there are different ways of controlling others. So this is the time where we see European countries having become unified, and a lot of nationalistic movements have already been taking place, and now they're wanting to go out and they're wanting to claim their stake on the rest of the world and show that they have the most power through having the most land and access to the most resources. So the different ways of having imperialism, you have three different types of colonies. Okay, well, first is being a colony itself. Okay, this is just a territory that is governed by a foreign power. An example is the 13 colonies. They were of the United States, or it eventually becomes the United States. They were governed by Great Britain. They had pretty much no government other than what to answer to Great Britain. Next, you have a protectorate. That is a territory that governs itself, but is controlled by a foreign power. So they have the right to make their own laws and everything, but they answer to their mother country. An example are the Boers of South Africa, who were Dutch settlers. Then we have a sphere of influence. This is just a territory in which a country claims exclusive political or economic rights, kind of like having a piece of the pie. What we're going to see is European nations going out and setting up these three types of colonies throughout the world, mainly being Asia, Africa, and then a little bit into Latin America. So the first place we're going to look at is the British in India. Now, new technology allows the British to go into India and pretty much take over. So they have gunboats, machine guns, and exploding shells. So gunboats allow them to travel farther inland up India's rivers to get to farther inland into India. Have the machine gun, faster than the old muskets and rifles, repeatedly shooting ammunition. And then you have exploding shells, okay, where before cannon shot cannonballs, just solid pieces of metal. Now they have exploding shells, which when they hit, they explode on contact. And all of these allow for the British to pretty easily take over India. First, we have the British East India Company, used its military might and takes over India. We have some different events taking place in India. First, we have the Sepoy Mutiny. Basically, what happened here is Britain used Indians in their army. They were called Sepoys. The main religions of India are Islam and Hinduism. Now, the ammo was they have new rifles, and so what happens is when you get new rifles, they have new ammunition. Ammunition is greased in pork fat, and this upsets the Muslim Sepoys because they're not allowed to eat pork because of their religion. And so the Sepoys thought that the British were trying to get them to convert to Christianity, and so they rise up against their commanders. Atrocities are committed on both sides, and eventually the British comes in and takes over the British government, and they take over for the British East India Company. Through this, India becomes known as the crown jewel of the British Empire because there are a lot of resources being shipped from India back to Great Britain, and allows their economy to be very prominent and successful. Great financial and political rewards come from the British having control in India, and we have what is known as the British Raj, okay, which is just a Hindi word for rule. Many of the British believed that they were superior to the Indian population and that they were doing the Indians a favor by having control over them. Through this, Indian nationalism begins to take place, and we've already talked about nationalism, having a sense of pride in your nation. We have two different groups coming about at this time. We have the Indian National Congress, which was made up of mainly Hindu Indians, and we have the Muslim League, which was made up of mainly Muslim Indians. The Indian National Congress was founded in 1885, an organization of English-speaking Indians who were trying to work with the British government to help improve conditions in India. Basically, the conditions got so bad that the British weren't helping Indians out. They were just mainly concerned about themselves, and they pretty much ruined the Indian economy. And so this group comes in and they want to try and work with the government to try and help improve conditions for India and Indians themselves. Muslim League eventually develops. They were a more radical organization. They were looking to preserve and protect the rights of Indian Muslims because they didn't think the National Congress was doing enough to help Muslim Indians. They did not believe the INC was protecting all Muslim Indians and that they were doing enough to help protect Indians' rights. Next, we're going to look at East Asia and the West. So this is where we're going to look at China and Japan. First, we'll take a look at Southeast Asia and look at how it was divided up between European countries. First, we have France. Napoleon III comes in and defeats the Nguyen in Vietnam. And in 1885, France has control of Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and Indochina. 1800s, the Britain has control of Burma, Malaysia, Malacca, Penang, and Singapore. And the Dutch have control of Sumatra, the East Indies, Borneo, and New Guinea. And Southeast Asia was a very good source of different spices, sugar, and coffee, as well as other materials that would be sent back to Europe. Next, we'll look at China. China was a very good source for many different resources for Europe, and they deal a lot with the British. Now, they all want to have a balance of trade, or the Europeans want to have that edge when they are trading. However, the British want a lot of things from China: silk, porcelain, tea, but the Chinese don't want anything back other than British silver. So basically what happens is the British are paying China for all these goods, but China's not paying to buy anything from Britain. So what happens is this creates an unfavorable balance of trade for Britain. The British solution is opium. China has a lot of opium, and so British have a lot of opium, and the Chinese want opium. And so what happens is the British start to trade opium. Well, opium is highly addictive. Okay, it's used in a lot of drugs, morphine, things of that nature. Chinese government sees what it's doing to its people, and they ban the import of opium. This re-establishes that unfavorable balance of trade, and so the British Navy does not like this, and they attack, and they force China to sign the Treaty of Nanjing, which is an unequal treaty. Basically, the only thing it did good was for Britain. Now, out of this, we have several different rebellions. We have the Taiping Rebellion, which occurred in the 1850s, the Boxer Rebellion, which occurred in 1899, and eventually the 1911 Rebellion, okay, which this is where we see the final overthrow of the Chinese dynasties, and China then changes from being a dynasty into a democracy and begins to modernize. Finally, we'll take a look at Japan. Now, Japan saw China as a non-example. In other words, they saw how China dealt with foreign nations and Western powers, and they did not want to do the same. They wanted to be self-sufficient. They wanted to do it all by themselves. So the U.S. Navy was eventually sent to Japan to try and force them to open up their economic doors, and this is where we get the Treaty of Kanagawa. Okay, basically, the United States scared the Japanese into wanting into trading. And this is about the time where we see the Meiji and the Meiji Restoration. So eventually what we see is Emperor Meiji seizes control from the local shoguns, putting an end to the Japanese feudal system, and Emperor Meiji wants to modernize his army and become industrial, set up schools. He sends officials to the United States and Europe to try and learn about their democracy, their military, their political aspects, but then come back and teach Japan about them as well. Also sets up communication systems, railroads, and telegraph, making it easier to communicate. This is also the time where we see the end of the samurai. So if you've ever seen The Last Samurai, the movie with Tom Cruise, this is the time period that we're talking about. Now we have some different events that take place during this time. We have the Sino-Japanese War. This is where Japan forced Korea to trade with them. So they go in, they attack Korea, which was China's ally, and they force them to trade with them. China does not like this, and so a rebellion takes place in Korea, and it is squashed by the modernization of the Japanese army. China is also defeated in Korea at this time, and so this is what starts to begin to make the people of China change their mind about industrializing and trading with the West. So that is a look at imperialism in Asia.